All right, we are live with the man, the myth, the Renaissance man. That's actually what I put in the category, David Osk. And truthfully, I stand by that, right? Just as a quick little to give David Osk a proper recognition, this is a man who built his own house. I mean, in a beautiful house out in Tennessee, right? He is a phenomenal, amazing, transcendent singer. He has his own business. He leads masterminds. He is my partner collaborator in the Authentic Growth Blueprint. So this is a very a special man, a Renaissance man. David Oss, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I tell you, this is, even for our topic today, this work-life integration, work-life balance, that kind of thing. This has been one of those days where I felt like I had just a nice, sharing of things, and there didn't seem to be that, that tension when you're not enjoying one or the other. So actually got up this morning. So I've been doing, so lately in my health journey, just been really lasering in on that. And so this week I don't do much running, but I just started this week. So I ran a 5K this morning. I ran one back on Monday. And then I got to spend about 2 hours with Lisa, just running errands, and we had such a nice time. And then this afternoon has been more work oriented, but yeah, it's a nice balance today.
Awesome. As I was saying, and for a few minutes in our prep, it's interesting that we're covering work-life balance and how basically it's, we should stop even thinking of it, I think, in those terms, right? I just don't think that really exists. I think it puts a lot of pressure on people. Like somehow there's supposed to be kind of this equal, balance and supposed to be, it reminds me a little bit in college or school, how are supposed to be these well-rounded students, right?
Yeah.
And so they force us to take a bunch of classes that often we don't really like, we don't care about. And if we don't do well in it, right, you get 5 A's and a B, right? They put the overemphasis on the B instead of saying, let's focus on, these classes. So,
Yeah.
To me, it reminds me a little bit of this sense of that we're supposed to be like these really, really well-rounded. And, today, what we're going to propose as a alternative to work-life balance is like this work-life integration. My life feels completely imbalanced today, right? I woke up first thing, went for a walk with a good friend, got a chance to work with the kids. I led them through their math assignments and doing some schoolwork. Immediately jumped on a work call, had a call with a friend. We're doing this. And then I've got 4 sessions, right, booked after this. And then my daughter's got a piano recital at the
Wow.
end of the day that I am so excited to be able to go and attend.
That's
And
neat.
so there is no real balance. I mean, I guess you could say that, I have kind of, divvied up my time, so to speak, in different categories,
Yeah.
but I don't feel balance, right? I feel, however, I have to say that at the end of this day, I think it's going to feel really fulfilling.
Yeah.
If you were looking at my values and you were saying, well, how did that apply to how I live my day? It applied, really masterfully. It
Yeah.
was an intentional, creating kind of a strategic way of living today and having an overall tapestry, right, that aligns with the things that matter most. So I'm weaving in throughout my day the things that really matter to me, so that I feel like my day, instead of feeling busy, right, instead of feeling like I'm on this kind of hamster on the wheel, I
Yeah.
feel like the things I'm doing really matter.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. And I love that. And I think that's the thing that kind of rose to the top there for me was in the past, I would often say yes to things that were not important to me. So I would feel like I'm sliding into home plate on a Friday, and I've never been that guy who, oh no, it's Monday, thank God it's Friday kind of thing. I truly have enjoyed my days, whatever I'm doing most of the time. What's fascinating though is I have had seasons though where I started saying yes to some things that were not important to me. So sliding into home plate on a Friday wasn't just like, hey, I spent, myself in a worthy way that was important and feeling, sense of fulfillment. I was just fragmented, honestly angry, just like, oh God, I want to check out, as opposed to being intentional about even resting. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love this topic, and I don't think there's a person breathing air who can't relate to this.
Yeah, we're such a busy culture, right? I remember one time I just noticed that when I'd ask people I hadn't seen or, I ran into, how are you doing? I mean, the answer is always some version of things are so crazy, chaotic, busy.
Yeah.
and same for myself, right? I mean, that was always my go-to answer. And it got to a point where when things slowed down, and I had free time, I felt
Yeah.
guilty. Like I really felt like I should be doing something productive right now.
Yeah.
And yet, when I stopped to say, well, are these things that I'm doing that are productive, right? Like, are they actually moving the needle? Are they moving me in a direction, creating, more meaningful interactions with my wife and my kids, right? Is it moving my business forward in a way that really is exciting? And
Sure.
the answer was like, no, right? Yeah, I'm busy, but it was really, I felt like I was just going through the motions, right? And
Yeah.
so
I get
when
it.
yeah.
Totally
And
get
the other, one of my other critiques of the work-life balance is that it somehow, to me, it creates kind of this notion that work is this separate entity in regards to life, right? Whereas, I think the work-life integration model, it's this idea that more that the work that you do is consistent with who you are, right? It's meaningful to you. And so it's again, a strategic decision that the work that you do, right? It may not be that everything that you do in your work is perfectly aligned, right? And is wonderfully intrinsically motivated and got you in flow state. But ideally, right, it's a reflection of using your strengths in a way that feels really gratifying. It's, you're having an impact that matters. You're doing those things, and which leads us into the topic on burnout, right?
it.
I remember listening or reading some research on the concept of burnout. They did some research on it, and that one of the greatest contributors to burnout was when we feel like we stop being effective, right? So we're working, we're showing up at home, but it feels like that we're just, again, really going through the motions. We're that hamster on the wheel, right? It doesn't feel like we're having an impact. That's where we are much more inclined to experience the phenomena of burnout, as opposed to even when we're busy, right? But if we feel like what we're doing matters, if we feel like what we're doing has impact, we are way less inclined to burn out, right? We're much more likely to find those activities recharging, that they are energizing. What do you think about that?
What's interesting is we often hear that the phrase instant gratification. So on a very basic level, we want to have impact. Like it's like we want to see that our labors, our efforts, move something literally, right? Maybe it's moving emotion, right? Whether, depending on your occupation, right? Or move some grass. I mean, it's like, man, I want to see that what I spent my time doing actually, yeah, move the needle in some way. But what's fascinating too, though, is I think about this idea of mowing the lawn and that kind of thing. In general, I like being on a lawnmower. You know what? It's kind of fun. I'll hop on my father-in-law has a really great John Deere zero turn. Hop on that rascal and cut some grass and so on. But here's what's interesting. There's a lot of people who you know they're that's the dent in the universe they want to make, right? They
Yeah,
love driving around town seeing all of the beauty that they created, right?
yeah,
Landscaping, flowers and bushes and irrigation, all that kind of stuff. I got a lot of friends who are in that business, and um, at the same time, that's not the impact that I want to have. It's not important to me. Once in a while, it's kind of neat just to go mow the lawn and trim some bushes. I'm probably going to do some of that tomorrow. We've got some that are getting kind of crazy. I'm actually going to enjoy that. But for me, it's kind of restful at the same time. It's not something that's intrinsically motivating as where I would find that sense of purpose or efficacy or things like that. And so anyway, I think it's fascinating. All of this, right, dials back to uniqueness. What is your identity, authenticity, the stuff we talk about all the time.
yeah. It's funny to hear you say that. One of the things that I enjoy doing, right? So, in taking care of this house and our kids, we've tried to kind of really create a clear, like, these are all the things that need to happen in order for this house to run in the way that we want it to run, right? So we created a list of what those things are, and then I put my initials next to all the things that I was like, I own this, right? I'm ready, and my wife put next, and there was a handful of things that either one of us took on, and we
Sure.
figured that out. But one of the things is washing the dishes, right? And I actually really enjoy washing the dishes. Might be a weird thing, but
Yeah.
there's something about the process of like watching the water clean something off where I see the impact, right? And I can see it go from dirty to clean. And I
Yeah.
find it really gratifying. And so even though sometimes, we'll have friends over, have people over with this massive pile of dishes, there's
Yeah.
something about it, right, that I actually, kind of enjoy. Again, I don't know that I get in flow state necessarily doing it.
Yeah.
Um, but and I think it has to do with the sense of watching, seeing the effect, seeing something tangibly change from, and it's amazing how when you do that. Now you could say something like that with doing laundry, that we can see the laundry go from, dirty or wrinkled to clean, but that
Yeah.
does not give me the same benefit.
Oh,
I really do not enjoy that.
yeah,
So,
man.
there's this notion of approaching, life from the inside out. In fact, I released it was an email, a blog today on this concept, that I think what a lot of people get wrong in their pursuit of success is they do it from the outside in, right? And I think this very much is going to apply to this overall work-life balance, work-life integration concept.
Yeah,
And so we're often taught, even at a young age, that our indicators of success are these external indicators, right? Like, did we make mom and dad proud? Did we make the sports team, right? Are we getting good grades? All these things, and we start to create identity around this. And so when we get older, right, there's still this sense of that, we pursue, we work with coaches, we pursue goals that are about getting, greater income, that are helping us to get six-pack abs, that are helping us to, get in the right social circles, whatever it might be.
sure.
The problem is, though, is that if we haven't done the inner work, the inner sides first, right, to really kind of go within and have a framework for understanding who we uniquely are, what really is important to us,
Yeah,
what drives us, right, that lights us up and feels like a great use of our time, and we actually feel more energized after doing those activities, and what are our strengths, how we want to apply those. So
sure.
when we know those things and we use that as a foundation to then choose work, to then choose what types of relationships, what types of goals and activities we want to really commit to, then we are building on a foundation that's rock solid. And
Yeah,
I promise you, even as your schedule fills up, you will not feel, over busy. You'll be way less likely to burn out,
yeah,
and you will create an overall tapestry of a life, right? A quality of life that's intentional, that is going to be rich in, I think, the external measures of success, because
yeah.
it's built on the internal, right, understanding, the internal clarity. What do you think of this notion of, focusing on the inside out versus the outside in?
I'll be honest, it lands even afresh here on a Friday after all of these conversations. It lands afresh here on me today. So I've had 2 rehearsals this week for some concerts and so on that I'm doing. And, over the course of my, if you want to call it a music career, I mean, nobody knows who I am, right? I've recorded some records and, sung in some, really fun places and with some really cool people, stuff like that. But I remember early on, my definition of success, was, hey, how many CDs did we sell that night?
Yeah.
Or, what was the feedback? That kind of thing. Of course, that kind of makes sense. At the
Right.
same time, there's been such a shift in me in the last few years when I've understood this whole inside out thing. And the reason is now that I understand, very, very clearly who I am and the impact that I want to have everywhere I am, right? And it's the same impact, right? At work, if you will, right? My businesses, when I'm doing coaching, masterminding, when I'm doing, this, when I'm singing, the cohesiveness at who I am and bring that to, whatever circumstance I'm working on is consistent, which what I'm realizing now, even with music, everything has shifted in that area. So, the other night I did some singing at our church. I've got a concert coming up on December 10th. And what's fascinating is I am so not concerned, about the extrinsic outcome. You know why? Because I'm a man on a mission, period. And I, even when I say that, I get goosebumps, even wearing my Misfit Tacos hat today. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel so intrinsically driven to lift people up, right? To remind them whose they are and who they are, to shine light in dark places, to lift the eyes of someone who's struggling. When I'm doing a concert or something, I want to see couples, their hands, kind of come together maybe halfway through, right?
Yeah.
Where in that moment they're reminded, hey, we just had this fight in the car. That doesn't matter. I love you. This guy actually helped me just to see some daylight here in this area. So I feel so missional, and it doesn't matter, whether I'm singing, at church or whether I'm, singing at a country club. I mean, I truly feel so so purpose driven, and it's nice to see the dent, right? It's nice to see some,
Yeah.
some certificates of appreciation with some income and things like that, right?
Right.
But
Absolutely.
what's fascinating is some of the places where I've actually, done some music and so on, where I have felt the most fulfilled, didn't make a dime. And I still remember those times where I walked away like, oh my gosh, that felt great being me. And I
Yeah.
wasn't concerned about that, what everybody else was thinking. It's just, it is freedom. Anyway, I hope that kind of answers or speaks to what you're talking about.
Well, it absolutely does. I was reading, it was I think a Medium article on Medium, and it was looking at regrets. I was trying to write something on Steve Jobs, and I have something about halfway written on that. But it was looking at the regrets that Steve Jobs expressed towards the end of his life. But it also included, it was, I think, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Elon Musk, and all of them had a certain set of regrets. And essentially, they all really kind of came back to the same regrets that Bronnie Ware brings up in her book, the five regrets of the dying, the
Mm.
hospice care nurse who spent the last days with dozens, hundreds of individuals. She got a chance to sit with them and hear what were the regrets that they carried in their last days. And
Yeah.
overwhelmingly, the number one was not living a life true to themselves, right? And I believe that is a byproduct of just not knowing who that is. If you don't know who that is,
Yeah.
then how can you do it, right? And then the essentially the marker then for how to live life becomes things outside of yourself, right? Whether it's being led by guilt, by pressure, right? Not wanting to disappoint people, all these things. And when you flip that upside down, right, we're not saying in any way that you shouldn't be socially responsible. In fact, we're saying quite the opposite,
Yeah.
right? When you know who you are, you're able to show up in a socially responsible, right, in a giving, loving way, in a way that's way more impactful, right? And you show up to the right things. You show, instead of getting burnt out, because I know a lot of people that are constantly volunteering their time, they're giving, right? But in private discussion, they're really unhappy. They're burnt out. They're stressed out. They feel like, why did I commit to this? I know I shouldn't have done it, but they have it. They can't say no,
Yeah.
right? And so while what they're doing is certainly noble, they're burning. They're setting themselves for major burnout.
Right.
However, when you start saying yes to the right things and you are able to say no to things that just aren't consistent, that aren't aligned,
Yeah.
it's amazing, right? Your impact is so much, it's exponentially, more impactful. And so, and to finish the thought, so the Steve Jobs, the regret was, so here was a man that often, we idolize these billionaires, and
Sure.
understandably so, right? Their creativity is off the charts, their innovation, all those things. But he spent so much time at work to the exclusion of his health and his family, and those were the two things that he carried at the end of his life, that he recognized you can't take this wealth with you, right? And so he wished that he had spent more time focusing on taking care of his health and spending time with family.
Yeah.
And yet we still see all these articles, what were the habits? We see entrepreneurs that are dressing up right in the same outfit every day. We do these things as if we're supposed to emulate and copy right what they did, but that's them, right? In fact, probably the one thing that Steve Jobs did that was most brilliant, and he talked about this quite a bit, is he says don't waste your life trying to live other people's lives. He was
Yeah.
willing to step outside of societal norms as it came to his business. Unfortunately, he didn't do that in other areas of his life. And I don't think he'd even want people to emulate, right? He wouldn't want people to be copying him. That was like the exact opposite of his message.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk and Bill Gates, I don't remember specifically, but essentially, I think Warren Buffett, there was a time where he made a decision out of emotion and he didn't follow his values and principles. And
Right.
it was one of the biggest regrets that he ever had, that he didn't stay true to himself. And I think he ended up losing, I forget, it was $200 million, maybe it was billion, who knows what it was, but it was some massive, because, he got hurt and he
Yeah.
decided emotionally to punish someone else. And, he didn't stick by his principles. And so in the same sense of not staying true
Man,
to yourself.
you and I we talk so much about, we use the phrase, what is your definition of success, or that question.
Yeah.
And here's what's fascinating. I think that, of course, when you're younger, you have, especially because the power of our environment, right, just speaks to so many of our ideas around what success even is. But here's what's fascinating. Back to your point about, those who are, on their deathbed and have regrets. Why was that? It's because they lacked an identity. What are those things that you identify with, right? Authenticity. What is that stuff that's authored in you? What happens is if you do not know those things, you cannot define success for you. Yeah. You might define success, but it's not going to be for you. And I think about, how I'm different from, Lisa, or even for you for that matter. I mean, we're so different. Your definition of success versus mine is going to be vastly different. At the same time, there's going to be some overlap with regards to, the impact that I really want to have uniquely on Parker and in Kate and Lisa, and all my other endeavors, that type of thing. That's unique to me. We would generally say, hey, I want to be a good dad. Yeah. But here's what's fascinating is what does that look like for me?
That's right.
Is it, hey, Billy Bob, let's go throw the ball in the backyard and not talk to each other? Well, at least I checked that off the list. I threw the ball with my son every single day of my life, but I didn't engage him. I didn't put my stamp on him, right? That my uniqueness on him. I didn't pass on to him things that were virtuous and good and courageous in me. And I think there's this generic sense, this broad sense of kind of what success looks like. And well, I guess I'll just head in that direction and stumble forward and, figure it out as I go along. You don't have to do that. And so when I think about burnout, honestly, several people that I've been talking to lately, they're not burned out at work. They're burned out at home. They're burned out on the most powerful and precious things to them. Why? They have no idea what success, quote unquote, should look like. They have no idea what impact that they want to have uniquely. So then they go home and they're horribly insecure because they don't even know what tools are in their belt. They don't even know how they, quote unquote, should be or could be even, right? It's just this. So then the wind blows and then everything kind of falls apart. And it doesn't have to be this wild swing the other direction, right? Where there's just all this structure and intentionality and that kind of stuff. When you understand, the beauty that's woven in you, and you just start taking steps in that direction, right? With a lot of grace and humility and laughter and everything else, well, then something really beautiful happens and humanity starts to bump into each other and you rub off on one another. And the burnout, whether it's at home or work, it doesn't have to be there. It doesn't have to be there. And that's, I think, for a lot of the, I guess, calls we've had like this, lives and so on, this is one that's really near and dear to my heart because I spent so long just feeling so burned out because I was not acting, in a way that was intrinsic to me.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many people, in grad school that, they were always in a hurry to get somewhere, right? And it was like, they were burning themselves out with, schoolwork and with, work and all those things. And they had no social life, and their excuse was always, they justify, I will do that when I graduate, right? Then I'll focus on those things.
Right.
But then they'd graduate, right? And they were always setting the bar with something else, right? That ended up getting in the way. And they thought they had good intentions, but I know several of those people, they absolutely have burnt out, right? I've had phone calls with them over the past 15 years, that they kept focusing on having to always, pursue that next carrot, right? Without stopping and really reflecting and saying, why am I doing this, right? Is this really what's important to me? And, and to your thought on, with the family and where people are experiencing burnout there, imagine what it would be like if you felt effective in your family. Imagine if you knew going home, right? Whether it's with your wife, with your spouse, your wife and spouse, same thing, kids, right? But you knew the very specific effect that you wanted to have on them. You knew you had the skills and strengths to have that effect, right? And then you could see in real time that you're actually having that impact. Yeah. That's a phenomenal recipe, right? For having incredible fulfillment from going home, right? Transitioning from work, going home and getting fueled, right? And getting charged up instead of, hey, I had a long day at work and now I've got to do this, right? Where I think a lot of people then check out. So,
what I'm thinking is when you're saying that, it's, Lisa and I are so different in the strengths that we bring our children, right? If they need some encouragement, guess who they come to, right? You know, it's Lisa will even, I mean, she is, I'll be honest, I totally married up. Like when I think about her skill set and her ability just to kick butt in life, I mean, I'm just so blown away by her abilities. But one of the things that I feel like I do really well is encourage people. And of course, when I, you know, I think about my kids, right? They mean more to me than anybody. And so I really want to have that impact on them, right? I want to encourage them. I want to give them courage. And so when they're feeling down, when they're feeling a little scared, or, you know, Parker had a hard day at work, you know, he's got a part-time job now, immediately, right? They're thinking, you know, hey, where's dad? And you know what? I love that. I love that. I love the fact that it's kind of like mowing the lawn. I see that instant gratification, and it just feels so great. Something we probably need to say here too is, as we're talking, where people are making comments and so on. So I know you're kind of looking at some of those, and maybe people have some questions, you know, around this topic, or some comments that would be, you know, apropos today. But I'm guessing that there's some questions out there that would be helpful to be answered today.
Love to hear people's thoughts on the whole work-life concept, right? Do they think that is you know, something, a noble goal, something that is achievable? You know, would love to get people's thoughts on this topic. You know, I think it is an important topic. And as you said, right, I think the more that we start from that place of knowing specifically what's important to us, and we're able to start giving like really clear language that's important to us, right? I was having a chat with someone the other day who has done some values work with me, and then he just had a consultant come through his organization. They pay a lot of money to go through values, but the person had an assessment tool and gave them their values assessment, and then it has their language, right? So it tells them, you know, these are your 4 values or 6 values, whatever it was. Sure. Right. And he said, man, he said, it just didn't fit. Like, you know, it was language that was like trying to fit, but it wasn't my language. He said, when I went through your process, right, like I chose the words, and he said, then the work we did afterwards, it was so practical, right? I was able to really see how it applies to every area of my life, and it has lit me up. And so I say that because when you are able to really give specificity, right, when you're able to get really clear on exactly the impact you want to have, you know, there's a legacy exercise that we have people do where it's really writing out your eulogy, right? Taking the time. And I've done this, you know, where I imagine what I'd want my kids to say, you know, at the funeral, what I'd want my wife to say, what I want, you know, my clients to say. And so I've written that out and given that a language. And the beautiful thing is, right, that's like the ultimate endpoint. It's so I can reverse engineer. If that's the impact, that's what I want people to be saying about me, and the lasting legacy I want to create, right? Then that helps me to understand who do I need to be right now? What do I need to be doing? And how do I need to be doing it, right? And why purpose needs to be fueling that, so that I'm able to start really taking meaningful, decisive, purposeful action, right? And I'm able to really create a work-life integration map, right? That is really powerful. I'll close out with this, and I know we got to wrap up here, but there's an exercise that I know you've done. You know, I know you've done the legacy one as well, but it's about priorities and how to really, you know, start to create, you know, your priorities show up in how you spend your time, your money, and your energy, right? And so the more that you are able to get really clear. So the exercise asks people to think, if for a moment you imagine that there was a documentary crew, right, and it was following you around for the last 3 weeks, let's say, you know, and suddenly now they're showing on the big screen, right, here's the life of David Osk, or here's my life, and they're showing how you spent all that time. You know, how would that accurately reflect what actually matters to you? Would you feel like, man, that is such a great reflection of who I am? And, you know, my life feels, when I watch that, I feel proud. I feel great. You know, or would you be like, man, there's a lot of wasted time or energy that's not at all consistent? I have a feeling I know what your answer would be, right? but I think it's a great answer. And usually when I ask people that question, right, you can see that sense of like, man, that they know that their life is out of alignment. And that is another great way to set yourself up for burnout. It's another great way to feel like, man, why do I always feel busy and tired and run down? Because your life doesn't reflect your biggest priorities, what matters most to you. So any thoughts on that?
I totally get that. So, you know, film crew, you know, I'm in my 20s and 30s, maybe early 30s and so on, there would have been a lot of great stuff in there, right? I mean, I feel like in general, I've been, acting, alongside my core values and, in and out for a long time. What's fascinating though now is, obviously through, your blueprint, assigning, a real, assigning meaning to those things and actually discovering a few other things that really leveled those things up and supported, really who I am, to get some vocabulary around that. I'll be honest, we're human, right? So we can be goofballs and whatever else. But what's fascinating is, when you said that, I didn't cringe inside. What if a film crew was falling? I think most people would just be like, oh, God, that kind of thing. And I feel so aligned with what I'm doing. I feel so purpose driven. And, you've got a recital tonight. I've actually got 2 tomorrow, and I just think about the life that I've been creating over the last several years, and especially as of late, is beautiful. Why? Because it's beautiful to me. My life may not be what somebody else wants. That doesn't matter. I want them to have the life that they want. But my life right now is beautiful to me because I have absolute radical certainty and clarity around what's important to me, what drives me, right? The impact that I want to have in a virtuous way that just feels great, being me. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. And the awesome thing is, knowing you and I know the genuineness behind that. There was a season in my life where, whether it was my wife or someone just even simply asking me, how was your day at the end of the day, would put me on guard. I would be defensive. Like, why are you asking? Right? What? I didn't do enough. There's a sense, and it just reflected again my own guilt, right? My own sense of not feeling effective, not feeling like, how I showed up that day made a difference, right? Not feeling like I had really, and I didn't even know what difference I was supposed to make. So how was I ever supposed to actually, right, fulfill that? So we'd love to invite, as we said, but whether it's the comments or sending us a message, if we can help anyone in this regard, it is a game changer, right? When you start to actually feel like, man, I've got a strategy for my life that reflects, who I am, and I have a language for that, and I've got skills and tools to be able to do that. I promise you, right? You can be wildly productive, but incredibly fulfilled. It is 100% possible.
You don't have to be burned out. It's not a way to live. Yeah. Way to go, man. What a pleasure to be on this call again with you today. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Have a great weekend, everyone.